Hi, everybody. Oh, I left Ben on here. I'm all off on my times and stuff. Sorry, Ben. We've got Skullcap Savant joining us today talking about the DTCC changes that are coming soon to everywhere near you. So give us a like, share the video, and I'll let him talk right after this. Okay, thanks to everybody joining us in the live chat. Sorry about the crazy intro. I just was a little blown away with what Ben was telling me just before we were getting started and trying to unpack these changes that this DTCC change is to be implemented on the 28th of this month. And so I guess there's been a series of these kind of winding down the clock, but some banks have not even participated. Can you kind of explain what this
Sure.
change is, who ordered it, and how it's going to play out?
Yeah. I mean, okay. So the DTCC is the clearinghouse for transactions by, in markets by any measure across international jurisdictions, right? I mean, they are the settling house for anything denominated in anything else. And they are synonymous with putting out regulations that are based on the SEC's dictates. So they just enforce what the SEC has brought to them for their functionality. So to be clear, this is actually an SEC regulation that's going into place, imparted on top of the DTCC, and the regulation states that the system-wide clearing time for transactions is being lessened from 2 days to 1 day, and this is happening next Tuesday. And it kind of snuck up on me. I haven't been paying too much attention. This is not unprecedented because this did again happen in 2017, like you mentioned just a second ago. It's happened before where the clearing time was reduced from 3 days to 2 days, but this is been a fluctuating amount. It's never gotten above 5 days since the Great Depression. They started implementing these measures for clearing after the Great Depression, by the way. The interesting thing is it was at 1 day back when we had bearer bonds, when we had paper bearer bonds that people had to shuttle around offices and actually file into cabinets and stuff. And, before the Great Depression hit and that collapse, we ran the whole economy based on 1 day clearing of transactions. And they only ratcheted it up to 5, throughout the World War periods, to get only then back down to 3 in the 90s and then 2 back in 2017. And then here we are today. But the risk today is we have a much different world that runs on technology, and the technology have algorithms that base trades off of assumptions from dealers, and your broker dealers having certain inventories of the assets, commodities, currencies that you're going to be trading in, and being able to trade back and forth in between those while being able to clear your transactions, get the money taken out of your account, put into your dealers, and then the asset that you're purchasing from your dealer put back into your account. That all needs to operate smoothly on the backbone of these transactions. But as you can go to with some of the articles that we've got to share with people today, there are tremendous risks anytime a system makes this kind of a changeover, especially just a few years after they did it before, where in that year, 2017, there were some chinks in the armor that were exposed then too, especially relating with cryptos and et cetera.
One of the articles that I was reading, they were talking about how, this could kill small banks because this demand of work for staff on a 1 day asset clearing issue. So, at first I was really excited about this because I thought, oh, good, get rid of the derivatives, have more accountability. They have to have the asset in their possession. So that would stop some of this manipulation. But then if you're beating out the little guy and the small bank because they don't have the staff to do this kind of, it's a ton of paperwork that they have to do, which I don't know, is that all automated?
Most of it is probably automated now, but you're not incorrect about the attention that probably has to be taken and put to completing these trades, because when you have when you have a discrepancy now where you're used to operating on a certain time frame, I mean, not everything in the world is digitized, especially like physical delivery of things, right? If that's a baked in unit of measurement of time that has to take for delivery to get somewhere in order to be validated on somebody's books as being received, so it can therefore clear. I mean, one day is an awfully short period of time for some of these validating characteristics to take hold in your transaction.
Mm-hmm.
So is it even possible to lessen it to a day is one of the, with today's world is what I have to ask. Because remember, back in the 20s, even before that, that was just the modality. People physically carried things forth. They had bureaucratic processes with stamps and stuff, and they'd file them away, and they had that validation at very least. And it was at a snail's pace, but they could actually bank on an inventory like a warehouse. Oh, it's there in the filing cabinet. Just like, oh, in a picking system, it's there in the warehouse. I can bank on it being there. So if you can imagine a scenario that where Amazon, you buy something from your cart and Amazon is used to getting it, like 20 units of whatever you're buying of your widget per every 2 days, but it can't guarantee that it won't not receive those on the next shipment. So you can purchase it, pay for it, have it shipped, have it like marked as ship, imagine, and then come back maybe 2 days later with an email from Amazon saying, "Oh, whoops, sorry,
we can't complete this.
We had it in inventory, and we don't really even have a way to refund your money. Sorry." That would be the scenario that we're running into.
But there could be a solution if you considered if their physical delivery really happened. Let's say I took something to the post office, and then the post office accepts delivery on their, let's say we're using a blockchain system. The post office accepts delivery and guarantees that it is now in possession of that. That could be a one-day transaction. But then however many days the post office held it, they, accepted physical delivery. So they physically have it into the point of handoff to the final destination. Then that could be a one-day transaction, peer-to-peer. But with that, the post office would have to assume responsibility. So they'd have to do their own, because right now they just take whatever you say is in the box. So they would have to start validating what they are taking possession of if they're going to be responsible.
Burden. Exactly. Yeah.
The
shorter you go with this. And I don't think many things are prepared. So in order to ground some of this stuff in the announcements themselves, how about we bring up some of these articles, like maybe the DTCC announcement itself. I think if you've got the link there where you see the one that's titled with DTCC.com.
Yes.
We can bring that one up first and kind of just detail with everybody what we're talking about. So like grounding this back down, we'll walk through everything that Lisa and I just rambled throughout the rest of this presentation and get to the end, to the point. But here's the announcement from last year, from May 24th, 2023, when this was first announced. And this got by me because at some point I was working in the blockchain and securities markets, and this stuff was my bread and butter for my research fodder. But I've been out of that mode for a minute, and this snuck up on me until like last week. And I started looking into it a bit and realized, oh crap, like I had suspicions with the T+2 transfer over in 2017 for reasons we may get to today. Okay. But the main point is what's happening now, next week, May 28th, 6 days from now, actually, is that the DTCC is
on
lowering,
a Tuesday.
It's lowering their settlement cycle for clearing transactions from 2 days to 1 day. That's what Lisa and I just got done kind of going over some of the implications for suspicions and implications. So you heard us say where some of the risk lies for this happening. And if you go down and you look at this list, Lisa, like if you scroll down and here, like, let me get up on my screen. Oh, here, assess the impact. So these are what they've got like 5 key initiatives in the 1 year that it was going to take them from the release of this to update to their technology. So you can actually see they're looking to assess the impacts, how it's going to affect behavior. The second thing they're looking to do is they're actually upgrading systems and technology that run these systems. So the backbone, it's not just algos that they're updating things with, they're updating something else. It might have something to do with the CBDC also. I mean, clearly reducing things to a one-day settlement may be a precursor to settling things instantaneously like they want to do. But obviously increased automation kind of would factor in with that initiative also. Mm-hmm. And so on and so forth. These are we can link this in the description. You guys can go in to this as their announcement of what they planned to do in the meantime between then. They ran some tests. If you go to the Fast Bull article now,
okay,
Lisa. So this was an article that came, and I think they even published this Fast Bull article in Bloomberg. So if you have a subscription to Bloomberg, you can find this article posted there too. I think Bloomberg picked it up on the 21st. But this is Samantha Luan talking about the risks of what's about to transpire. And if you actually scroll down to the first section underneath the graph that you saw there, Lisa.
Okay.
And you start right there. So it says international investors who hold about $27 trillion in American markets face a system in which the usual method of funding a U.S. trade, remember, the things that fall into this category are anything U.S. equities, bond structures, investments for asset classes, does not include currencies. The main thing we want to maybe come back to is that the classes of things that are changing their settlement cycles do not include currencies. So it depends on how you define a currency, coinage even. It's going to get pretty interesting, I think. But anyway, back to the article. The 27 trillion in American markets. They face a system in which the usual method of funding U.S. trades takes no longer than they actually have to execute the deal. Unheralded parts of the trading process, like affirmation, which is the confirming of the details. So when a trade is executed, guys, you have all this metadata that has to go and handshake with the opposite side in order for the trade to complete. That's all they're talking about there. It's no different than like a blockchain transaction validating. You get the picture. Fixing errors, recalling securities out on loan, all this stuff. If you think about how a transaction on blockchain kind of takes some time to process, that's this too. There's a fixed amount of time that all this stuff has to take. And like Lisa and I were kind of discussing, you can't change the amount of time necessarily it takes for those processes for the validation pieces to occur, whether they're physical delivery of something or the constraint on your computer's processing power to do the thing. Maybe it's a day and a half, and you could have done that with 2 days of clearing, but you can't anymore because so you see these are chinks in the armor that we're starting to go through. So global funds face a mismatch where cash flowing in and out moves at different speeds to the assets that they have to buy and sell. So that's the key consideration there. This is kind of the thesis for the whole suspicion that something might start to break. If it doesn't break day and date, all collapse, all happen on the 28th next week. This may be a key date where we can point back to and say, yeah, this is where really things became.
That was the first domino kind of thing.
Yeah. So if you scroll down just below the next headline for lots of anxiety, it says, under current rules, anyone purchasing a U.S. stock has 2 days between hitting the buy button and actually having to deliver the money for the trade, while the seller has the same time to supply the share. Remember what I just told you guys. Both of those things are on T+2 right now. They both have the same time to clear. Now, with currencies being out of sync, a dealer is going to have more collateral on hand of whatever they're selling you as the trader in order for this to complete, because the settlement times are now out of sync. They have to make different bets based on what they have in inventory. This like goes back to that Amazon example. That's not good because things are already in such, precarious balance, a balancing act with the money magic that they're doing with this stuff. A couple paragraphs down, it says, Keeley at JP Morgan and Company, internal modeling shows about a quarter of the currency trades it processes for clients are set to be impacted. Remember, guys, the currency's decoupled now. What did JP Morgan also state yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. Jamie Dimon came out and said he's no longer next week going to be interested in doing any more stock buybacks.
Did you just call him Peely?
Peely? JP?
You just said Keely.
Oh, I got John Keeley on the brain. JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon. I'm sorry.
Who is John Keely?
He's an inventor from the late 1800s, and I was looking a crap ton into him because of the Terrence Howard thing that was just on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Okay, sorry. I digress.
It was just a slip of my tongue. Yeah, it's a totally different guy, guys. Forget I said John Keeley.
Never mind. Yes, sorry.
JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon said just, I think yesterday, that starting next week, I'm pretty sure, I didn't pull up that article. I'm paraphrasing what I think I remember from yesterday, that he's not going to do stock buyback purchases for JP Morgan anymore because they will be too expensive.
Yes, I had heard about that. And
I think that's tied to this.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because expensive relative to what they can afford with the currency clearing. Mm-hmm. A couple paragraphs down, and you'll see a paragraph that starts with just 9%. Here you go. Right here. So here's some statistics for you guys about how the sell side works. Again, this is your dealer that you'd be buying something with at the counter of your trade. Just 9% of sell side firms polled by Coalition Greenwich in April and May of this year said they expect the T+1 switch to go smoothly. 9% of people are ready for this, they think. And that's because of their models, they're semi-confident on this, right? And they put some aside. I don't know what this 38% really measures, but they say the 38% warning that a buy-side manager are unprepared. 28% believing trading platforms aren't fully ready at all. Almost a fifth anticipate a large disruption with many or severe issues. So, I mean, these are qualitative statements here, but they're getting people's opinions on the poll is all they're doing. The consensus view is that the trade failures, when either a seller doesn't deliver securities or a buyer fails to produce payment, are about to rise. The question is how large and persistent that uptick will be. And then if the arbitrage trade becomes decoupled more and more on a daily basis, right, that will now compound. So this is it. This is not good. Go down a couple clicks to this next chart that you're going to see.
Okay.
And you're actually...
And it's saying Friday fears.
Friday fears. Yeah, this is what I'm showing you. So this is what we were talking about, I think, in the pre-show.
Yeah.
Where you were saying Friday is a really precarious day too, because people are going to want to pile in before this upgrade to get whatever trades that they can before it goes live. And you can even look at this chart. They only have tracked up to May 11th on this chart below. But you can see the exponential, right? And this doesn't include last Friday. And so I don't know what last Friday looked like. I didn't look into that yet. But if you just follow the parabolic rise, I think with the NVIDIA earnings today coming out and people wanting to cash in on this, I mean, we just had the second meme stock rally with GameStop and AMC last week. So, that is the one that I'm curious about, because it would have been reflected at the end of last week's trading. Okay. And they don't show that little blip on this graph.
Of course.
So we have, we've got some things to look out for. If you scroll down, there's another point I highlighted here. It says right below the foreign exchange. Here it is. The Foreign Exchange Professionals Association reckons the problem will also be acute at month and quarter ends and around national holidays.
Like Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. And maybe also something that is sparked now, and then when the next quarterly earnings reports have to come out, that's when everybody has to assess the damage and be like, holy crap, the tornado.
Because then they have to report to their investors.
Yeah.
So that's where, like, if they fail to report, and it'll come back, did you know about this risk? And why didn't you disclose? It'll be interesting to see how many of them
you'll get all
disclose to their investors.
I want to know answers, like whatever the answers may be. People are going to be hollering and screaming. So there's 25 to 30 days a year where there's potentially specific challenges, said the Global Intermediary Services head at HSBC. He has organized staffing for specific holidays on global bases to help clients with liquidity provisions. Liquidity provisions, everyone. This is that difference between the currency trade and the float, and so you've got down below there, the head of FX trading at Russell Investments in Seattle saying liquidity will be a big issue, right? So right below that, the double jeopardy line. This is pretty important. The move to T+1 is intended to cut risks at the broker-dealer level of the U.S. equity market after the 2021 meme stock frenzy forced retail investor platforms like Robinhood to restrict trading in certain securities. That was because the collateral they needed to post, the cash to cover trades over the 2-day settlement process, threatened to exceed what they could pay amid the surge in volume. So what do you guys think that's going to do now? It's not going to fix that. They're almost suggesting like, well, we're doing this because this will fix it. It's only going to make it worse. So it's asinine to suggest like, well, you know, this is what they're being told. I mean, this guy's just reported, or I think it's a woman actually that's reporting on this. But anyway,
this new rules require that affirmations are finalized by 9 p.m. In New York on the date of a trade. Data from the Depository Trust and Clearing Corps, which oversees post-trade functions for the bulk of American securities transactions, show that affirmation rate rose to 89 or 83.5 in April from 74.95 a month earlier. It makes me wonder if we're going to. This is so funny. I just picked this plate up, and it's Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And one of the things on it says fireside chats to calm Americans or something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, there's that video of the Fed lady where she's like, well, preferably, we know it's going to happen. We'd hope it would happen on a Friday so that we could over the weekend decide how we would reopen and be able to get communication out to the American people to explain to them.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we all got some fireside chats from old Sleepy Joe.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, hopefully they're not as psyopy as FDR's were, huh?
Well, I am sure it will be. And can you imagine? That won't bring any confidence. It'll cause a massive bank run on Tuesday morning.
Well, it could. It certainly has the makings. This is the thing is I think I don't know if it's. I really don't know if it's going to happen day and day. There might be like a disbelief because it's not a run on the bank. This situation is
but if Wall Street shuts down because they have to pull a Robinhood and say in trading, because they know they can't fulfill.
The dominoes are certainly in play. It's just like I don't know how many dominoes are set up in between. You know the two events because. Maybe if I was doing so much more research analysis over the last 2 years or so and tracking, incremental data better, I'd probably be able to give a better assessed prediction on a date. But
well,
like you said, after a holiday, it's going to happen on a Tuesday. Cliff's, and just look at Cliff's timeline. He's saying maybe like June or something, mid-June would be when a collapse happens. And then, and then I've got my July 19th Oz date, as we've talked. Isn't it funny, by the way, the Twisters tore apart you saw the videos of the Twisters tearing apart the wind turbines?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen that.
That was going all over the internet, just like the Twisters trailer. Remember when we were watching it? And
yes. They tore down the windmills. Yep,
yeah. Everything's coming into really weird relief with the Oz
Twister
stuff.
Was trending on Apple Movies, the original one.
The original one.
Yeah, it was like number 4 or something crazy. And I was like, what in the world? Talking about how this will affect banks, I guess. Would this next article have some information we should share? The business.
I think we should go to the Caitlin Long video to backstep and show people visually, because she's got really good visuals in this video. I think you'll be impressed with how she walks people through this. So
she's amazing.
Before we go into any other implications, guys, because I want to get into the silver arbitrage, China, and maybe tie some of this stuff together too. But this is a video from 2016. I don't know if anybody here is strictly aware of Caitlin Long, but she is a legislator and one of the judiciary trailblazers, I guess I can call her, for legislation in regulation around cryptos, Bitcoin, namely. And she's the one that got everything legalized in Wyoming. That's where she's based out of. She has a custodianship firm and some other things. But before that, she was a trader on Wall Street. And kind of similar to like a Catherine Austin Fitz story, she was like, "What is this evil I'm participating in?" So she got to the bottom of this, and I want you guys to see on a microcosmic level why we might want to be concerned about the clearing of things. to help, and she's going to help illustrate this in an example that she shares from even who I think is the head of the DTCC and all these regulators, CD and Company. And you guys may have even heard Bix talk about CD and Co. She describes what CD and Co does in the background to orchestrate this. And we'll talk after this clip about, how it applies to today, but it's going to be pretty apparent.
Okay.
In Wall Street's ledger systems that are prone to inaccuracies. And it's related to the earlier problem. I'll connect them in a moment. But the way securities used to work was very simple. Issuers issued this stock certificates in paper form to the investor. And what I say by investor there is either you individually or through your agent, like a pension fund or a mutual fund or an insurance company. But you always owned the stock certificate in paper form. That's how it used to work. Since 1994, we've got this very convoluted procedure here.
Since
where
T3,
you see
by the way.
The issuer issues securities to a company called CD & Co., which is owned by the Depository Trust Corporation. And then the custodians hold the securities on your behalf. So there are a minimum of 3, sometimes 5 or 6 layers between you and the issuer. When I first figured this out, it was amazing. I was working in the capital markets and looking at a bond prospectus. And in the prospectus is language that says that the issuer of the bond has no obligation to pay interest and principal to the investor.
They don't even try and hide it. They tell you, right?
Think about that. That is expressly in the bond prospectus. You are buying a bond and you are not getting an obligation to pay interest and principal from the issuer. What's happening is the issuer is paying CD & Co., who has an obligation to pay the custodian, who has an obligation to pay you. These layers of intermediaries create unnecessary counterparty risk, operational risk, and the risk that the system gets out of sync, because each one of those layers is reconciling against each other. And until more like 10 years ago, all of these companies batch processed their transactions overnight. That's part of the reason why it took 3 days. Now it's 2 days to settle securities transactions, because it's got to go through layers of intermediaries, each one of them needing a day overnight to process the transaction.
She's explaining that.
And so
she's
you can see that
our process that we're talking about. And she's explaining how it's getting even more risky as they're reducing. So that's, again, just to make it clear to everyone, she's talking about these clearing days going from 3 to 2. And this is back.
And now to 1.
To 1. Yeah. So, but keep playing that. I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that point. That's what this is kind of the bump set spike.
That this system inherently foments inaccuracies because they're not all going to be in sync at the same time. And it also creates settlement delays where it requires 2 days to settle securities transactions. However, the technology no longer requires that. We've long past moved the need to have this crazy system, but we're stuck with the legacy.
Hit pause there again.
What are the problems?
Hence the need for their technology upgrades with this time around. She is correct. We have bypassed the need to do these plus 2 days if a perfect implementation were to occur. If everyone was supplied with the same machines, the same software, the same regulations. This is not how it works in investment houses. Like, every broker dealer has their own licensing agreements, their own lawyers, their own throughput analysis, and different documents. None of these documents match to each other. It's all haywire. Plenty of attack surfaces for like things to get hacked into and manipulated, as well as things to become out of sync, because there are just too many moving parts at that point that don't have a uniform understanding that they're going from to T2 or to T1. So,
well, and especially with the currency being out of sync, like you said, then these securities, because like with this is where the double spend thing that blockchain solves is so powerful and strong, because we're all, mom and I are working on a project right now, and she said, well, okay, we can do this spreadsheet and then I'll save it and I'll rename it and then I'll send it to you. And I was like, no, because then we won't be, I said, I'll just do a Google Sheets where we're both looking at the same document. We're looking at one point from 2 windows. And that's the kind of solutions that we need, is not where, well, I'll save it and while it's at my house, you have 2 of them, but at your house, you have 4 of them until I tell you don't. And then what happens if I go sell the 4
You're
and she's
exactly.
already sold 2 of them.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we've gotta have that one point where we're all in sync with each other.
And blockchain is that, and that's her
And
point.
blockchain
But
is that.
one more point she's about to illustrate the consequence of what we just walked through here, right? And this is where we really want to make some some people pay attention to next week with this next little section here.
Mhm.
Some of you are probably skeptical and thinking, I trust my brokerage account. I trust my broker. I've never found a mistake. They're honest. Well, let me give you some examples. The first one was just about a year ago in litigation in Delaware, Dole Food. There was a class action lawsuit, and the details are not important, but here's what matters. There were 36.7 million shares of Dole Food outstanding, and in a class action lawsuit, there were 49.2 million claimants to the consideration in the class action lawsuit. Again, 49.2 million people had valid brokerage statements showing that they owned Dole Food shares, all of whom had valid brokerage statements. 49.2 million, but there were really only 36.7 million Dole Food shares outstanding.
Right there.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
what Patrick Byrne will call the bezel when he talks in a moment. If that makes you not trust your brokerage statement, good, because I don't trust mine. All of those 49.2 million showed up on valid brokerage statements. And again, it's because of these layers of intermediaries that can get out of whack at any given moment in time. Procter & Gamble, you might have.
So that's really the end of our emphasis, but go back to the CD and Company chart that she showed, all those layers of intermediaries, and it's a simple chart right there.
Mm-hmm.
But what she's trying to illustrate is the big game of Plinko that your money has to go down and touch, and that's why everything's so expensive to invest in, like we were talking about. But those intermediaries aren't going to all sync up with each other perfectly on this trade over. It's just not going to happen. And as you can see, like
why Reggie's patents are, I'm sure, being attacked, and why it's so important.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Reggie's tech, and as you now know, I'm very fond of Reggie because when I was in the space working on regulatory legal language for trading securities for a platform like Reggie's, like legal language on all jurisdictions that would interoperate with a platform like Reggie's, it's been something for 8 years that I've been ringing the bell on these very things. And the FTX collapse, when our whole company was saying, guys, what are you doing? All this pump and dump scheme that was happening in Telegram channels and all this ICO stuff. And I lived through all that in the industry, and it was weird because we were, the adults in the room having these conversations, and nobody wanted to hear these things back then. And because of that, here we are. I mean, it's really sad, but this is because no one wanted to see this is the way things operate. They now fail to see all the failure points in the system because they don't see the system for all its gears and cogs and what it is. So
they were trying to make the crypto into like legacy finance, and you see how broken it is. And when it was perfect the way it was, if you use it for its use case and not try to make number go up with it. Yeah.
Wow. So anyway, I mean, this is our consequential pondering now for what's going to occur May 28th and beyond. And consequently, we already have the arbitrage trade with silver going haywire between China and the US, like we mentioned earlier.
And I wondered what would happen over this weekend. We were all, my family, my mom and my husband and I were all, wow, with silver closing at, I don't know if it was 36 on Friday in China, but it was like, it hit 31 something here. Then it doesn't trade for all the weekend. So we're like, what are we going to wake up to Monday?
And with currencies and silver being designated as a currency in many jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm.
Because
then that allows for the 2-day.
Yeah, it's going to become out of sync. It's still 2-day clearing, and there's all sorts of games that you can play with your inventory scraping and arbitrage. And if those gaps become too wide, the market's going to break eventually. Even at the $40 to $30, we're not that far away. We're at 35 to 30 or 36 to 30 or something like that. Earlier today. And psychologically, people are going to look, if it's $10 more, it's 25% higher in
Right.
value,
They're going to
the hell?
buy up the physical asset in the
Yeah.
US and demand delivery.
Mhm.
Um,
Or yeah, like
'Cause then they could sell it over there for
if
that
they
much more.
especially if they
Well,
can
and then
deliver.
but with the gap in the days, that's where they don't even have to have it before they sell it.
Yeah. Yeah, and this does factor in with some high speculation that I do want to throw in there for
Okay.
people to ask the question of what's going on with the silver in China and all their solar projects, right? I mean, everybody
Right.
that watches Bix's stuff is probably very familiar with his analysis for like last 6 to 8 months, maybe a little longer.
Mhm.
It's pretty much focused on the silver numbers, the Silver Institute surveys, and
Well, he
and
started off with that investigation about the mint and
right,
silver eagles and all
yeah,
that. Well, I don't even know if they would call that a starting point. He's been at
yeah,
this quite a while, but, that was kind of that trigger, and then he
okay.
ran down that rabbit hole, and then now he's gone into so he's really like, I think he knows where every ounce of silver is in the US. He's like, "I
Or
know
where it's ledgered. I think he knows where it's ledgered for sure. Because
Yes.
this
Yeah.
brings up my suspicion actually is, um, I in studying what's been going on, I have a unique lens on solar itself. I analyze it differently too, because I had a solar power, sales company at some point. I had other partner installers and things that I used, but I learned a crap ton about the cartel that is that industry, and, um, China was always curious with what they were doing with their numbers and also just with how they ledger projects, municipal projects in that country. If you look operationally at how China does things, they do a lot of money magic with actual labor force. And that's what these ghost cities were. It was a big ledgering scheme, money magic situation where they'd erect a bunch of buildings. Everybody around the world was confused by this too. Everybody's looking at this. Like Vice was even doing it, articles on it to make it popular with the young kids to look at these ghost cities. It was like this cultural oddity, and it all was kind of centered around them doing the Olympics. I think it was like 2008 or something. They remember all this show they were trying to do for the
Mhm.
Olympics and raise all this money. And so they raised these cities. They paid everybody exorbitant amounts of money that they printed into existence, but they paid it to people. So they made it productive. And then they could hide a lot of their ledgering schemes in this building. They build up their asset book and they value it a certain way and it can go on the book. But when you actually look at how the construction projects ended up being run, it was all within the same conglomerate. So you'd have the construction company be the funding organization, also be the inspector, also be the regulatory arm, also be the supplier of all the raw materials, the shipping, and everything. Everything was done through one silo. So the opportunity to game the system is 100% because
Mhm.
and you're working directly with the CCP who's giving you the money for this. So you've got like the green stamp of approval from the CCP to fudge the numbers. And they weren't installing a lot of key things in these buildings. So you'd look at them from the outside and it would look like a replica of Paris or whatever it was, but they wouldn't run electricity in there, which meant that they didn't have copper in the wires. But when you go look at their build prospectuses and their order sheets, they're still ordering all of this stuff, but
So
they're just
where
not
did it
putting
go?
it into the buildings.
Mhm.
And then conveniently, when they have to deleverage their books, they can just destroy a ghost city, employ a bunch of people, go destroy it, and employ them to clean it up, and you do the thing all over again. So, I have had a sneaking suspicion and pondering all along, because China operates this way. These TopCon panels that Bix talks about, there being so much silver in. Is the silver going into the panels? Is all the silver going into the panels, or is some of the silver going into the panels? Who's validating it? Who's auditing this? Who's making sure that the panels that are in a solar farm are even hooked up to the grid and are producing power? Are they just ghost, dummy solar panel farms?
When you brought up a great point of the recent destruction of some of those huge, that huge solar farm,
Floating one.
in the
Yeah.
ocean, the floating
The
one,
barge.
yeah.
Why put solar panels on a barge anyway? What a stupid idea. And so they destroy them, and then they could take a loss on their books for the silver that they can't reclaim. But did they ever put it in there in the first place? Did they take that silver and put it in a vault somewhere instead because it's more valuable for other things? And this is where I have many questions, because I don't know if solar has a ton of the longevity that people think it does. because you don't get yield of your power generated on site with solar unless you have a system there to convert it. And the power grid won't let you do that. Yeah. Most power grids want to monitor.
And then those don't last that long. Those batteries last, what, 5 years or something?
You get a 5-year life cycle out of producing your own solar on demand.
Right.
But you're going to lose more than 60% of the power you generate with a solar system, get transmitted to a relay station. The relay station has to go to a conversion station. The conversion station has to meter it back to the power company, and they have to then they have to send it out. And
that's what I had no idea that happened. I've met a lady, Charlene, and she does she's a teacher professor at the University of Utah, and we would go there once a year. Ben and I would go and help with her thing, but she used to work for a power company, and she was explaining that it's like taking a bucket of water from the ocean and running as fast as you can to get it to your house, to try to throw it on your house in Oklahoma. And she said, by the time you get there, so much has sloshed out because of it has to use itself to travel.
It's dirty. Bugs are in there now.
Right. She's like, electricity is like so not efficient, and that was the first time I'd really heard that, but you're explaining the same thing. Yeah. So
it's called the last mile problem. It's a calculable thing that can't be overcome because the system's set up the way it is. Okay. So the silver arbitrage, funny enough, is all happening with China. This is where the curiosity is this heightened price with the silver arbitrage. They are paying higher amounts for it. And that they're paying higher amounts for it, I don't think means that they're just funneling them into industry right now. I bet they're stocking up. So, and they're using subversive mechanisms to trick everybody into thinking that they don't have it, or we destroyed it, or we used it.
Right.
Strategic.
Yeah. Interesting.
Maybe. This is a maybe. This is my fundamental research analysis brain, guys. This is me picking these threads up like 2 days ago. These are suspicions I have. Remember, these are not conclusions.
Right.
But they're curiosities nonetheless. I mean, that you can't answer it with certainty means I think there's a lot to explore there. That's all I'm getting at.
I think it's a great question to ask. Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, I don't know. I don't know if anybody's got any questions about this stuff, but the corollaries too that we can talk about with the Mt. Gox situation may or may not factor in to these events being connected with the transaction system changing over.
So I think everybody wants to know, like, what are the consequences of this? What do you see as like the consequences? Like Dana's asking, my sister-in-law asked her broker and he told her not to roll over to silver.
Just failed trades. Like your broker dealer will have orders on your book. So the way they make you money and the way they make themselves money is you give them, depending on what your agreement is with them, they'll make the trades that they're allowed to execute for you, but it goes onto a book. There has to be a dealer out there that has a supply of those things for you to buy, right? And then when the price meets where your buy order comes in, you're supposed to take delivery on whatever you bought, whatever asset that was, whatever equity that was, whatever bond that was. But the clearing time that it takes for that transaction to clear can break. They can, like you said earlier, the dealers, the people that are going to have things in inventory for you to buy, whatever they may be, commodities, whatever assets, like whatever bonds you're trading in, if they have those in clearing at the old time frame, and they promise them to another person who hasn't upgraded their system yet, even, let's say,
right,
they didn't upgrade it right, and their system still maybe operates on the 2-day-old spectrum.
Well, and just to jump in there with that, it could be worse than that, because there are some, in one of the articles you shared with me, there are some that have not even upgraded to the 2-day system.
Exactly.
So there may be an even greater gap.
For one thing that might go wrong, and there are a multitude of these one things that might go wrong. And that's what I'm just trying to say, like, basic level things that you thought were in. That's why I give that Amazon example first. The things that you thought were at the Amazon warehouse, you bought it. It said that they delivered it to you. You even got the message delivered in like a tracking invoice in your email, just like when you buy anything. But this time, oddly enough, they email you the next day saying, well, shit, we really didn't have it. And sorry, your money is ours now because we don't have a way to refund it. And so that transaction then between you and Amazon fails completely. And in order to make up for that, you have to go, well, I still want the product. And you have to go spend more money elsewhere to buy it. Amazon still wants to sell those things. They're scrambling to go get them. And there's nothing available. The whole thing crashes. Because
all of a sudden the fear and greed model kicks in and scarcity on top of that.
And that's just, again, that's one simple thing that can go wrong. The complexities of these systems not upgrading congruently with each other, and there really not being any uniform auditing process for this beta to have gone well or not, leaves me with a great amount of, like deer in a headlight.
Because it's still the custodian and the sub-custodian, like in
Caitlin's company chain, all of that organizational structure under CD and company still exists. And all the failure points, instead of it just being the bearer bond. Remember, back in the 20s, I started this conversation when T+1 did work. She illustrated it perfectly. It was literally a piece of paper that you delivered, and that was your chain of custody. You got it handed to you. There's delivery, T1. And that's why it could operate that way. Everything was much more centralized into a building, and people would, we didn't have decentralized trading algo machines trying to do high frequency trading. Even those are concentrated because they put those next to the big internet bandwidth centers, right? You'll see them in New Jersey because it's where the fiber connects from the ocean and blah, blah, blah. But it's a multitude of complex possible failure points that will compound on each other. And what the result will be is that arbitrage trade getting wider. That's how we'll see if this is the arbitrage trades of basically things denominated in currencies, I think, in my opinion.
You think the silver will be the most glaring.
And the silver might be the most glaring because
because it's so suppressed here. And then with the T out of sync and having that arbitrage time with currency taking different times than the securities.
We'll see how well they prepared. That's all I can say. The banks better have prepared their asses off. If nothing happens, it means they prepared, right? And their technology upgrades were good enough. I'm just illustrating the challenges and the risks that are associated here.
Yeah. You did have send me this, and I saw a meme the other day of a guy standing across the street from Bank of America, and he was painting it, and it was all on fire. But it wasn't really on fire in real life. Yeah. But that was his little
that's pretty funny.
Bob, whatever his name is, happy trees painting guy takeaway. But this was Bank of America's takeaway. And they really do seem to be, I guess somehow they got, and Bix does a much better job explaining this, but it was always JP Morgan that was holding the derivatives, and then somehow Bank of America, like, maybe you know this better, like gave them a loan or helped them with it or got somehow involved with it. And so they're in a very precarious state because of that. But they just these are the key takeaways, which is kind of what we've already talked about, I guess. But this is what a bank is warning about. The SEC rule changed, and it will go in effect May 28th. And if you think they don't plan these things, they plan these things.
I know that the ritual of it is also there. Yeah.
Yes. It's all there. Allocations, prime brokerage trade files. Now this one is saying deadline of 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern. U.S. securities.
That's for end of trading on Friday. Yeah, I think they have to have their final orders and clearances.
Oh, this is allocation prime brokerage files for U.S. securities need to be submitted on the trade date T+0 prior to
forwarding trade dates. Yeah, so all trade dates moving forward will have this time as a cutoff for.
But then it says all trade confirmations and trade affirmations must be completed on the trade date prior to 9 p.m. So between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m., they have to figure it out. Is that what they're saying?
Trade allocations for the brokerage, it means like, what are you laying out to be delivered, right?
Okay.
And then the trade confirmations mean that it's been validated that they're in inventory and then they're on their way and that they're going to be delivered into the account of the trader, right? And out of the account of the broker. And it's not delivered yet. It's just confirmed. So it's set. the allocations are checked, like the inventories are checked at that 7 p.m. deadline, and then the confirmation that it's going to be sent, it looks like
And
happened
then
at
this
the 9
is
p.m. threshold.
confirmation of sending, 9 p.m. For over-the-counter equity derivatives and swap trades, clients will be expected to agree, instruct, and settle cash flows in a T+1 timeframe. All accruals and settlements will be moving to a T+1.
Do you see how the
settlement.
language is specific? Clients will be expected to.
Yeah.
On them.
Yeah.
Meaning, I hope you hired, hotshot enough lawyers and software specialists that upgraded your stuff and all of your legalese to do all of this efficiently.
So they're saying this is Canada and Mexico both recently announced a T1 compliance date of Monday, May 27th.
Yeah, it's all of North America.
They don't have Memorial Day.
It's the day before us though, because they don't observe Memorial Day.
So we may see stuff happening in Canada and Mexico.
Yeah.
On Monday that we're all sitting in the pool or at the lake with the family.
Perhaps not, because their markets all roll through ours. So you may have like the tee up for what would be happening the next day.
But a little bit of panic here, I would think. Or it has to close that night. Monday, May 27th, that's the first day. So then that night, it has to close at 7 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern. And then we all wake up Tuesday morning and it is Canada and Mexico are train wreck and they know what's happening to us the next day.
Or just no trading or something. I don't know. Yeah, we won't know the breakage until the day. That's the thing. No matter how much research I do between now and then, I'm never going to get to the bottom of what kind of breakage will occur, because I don't know who all CD and company enlists with every transaction to touch all these things.
Right.
So you would need the whole list of that and getting into where they send money to, and
this is really, I mean, I know I shouldn't say it's exciting, but it's exciting. Like so many of us have been waiting for this fake magical magical money system to break, and they've kept kicking it down the road. The click of the mouse, like Vic says, changing things. And this is like really gonna, I hope. So that one where it said T0 versus
T0 just means day and date. Today is T0.
Today. Okay. Oh, where did I go? Anyway. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. That the one was allocations and prime, because that means that day, the day that it happens, that's not even the T+1. So has it always been T+0 for allocations?
Yeah, I mean, I think so for a while, because look at this analogy. It's like you closing your till down at the end of the night.
Okay.
From running a retail establishment, right? That's T0, counting your petty cash and your difference in margin for the day and all that stuff. You put that into a ledger and you put it into the safe, and so it's not hard information to validate stuff like that, right? How much money did you make today? What was your inflow and outflow? And it's not everything needs clearing time. It's just things that have systems and processes attached to them that have actual work attached to the throughput, So, they want to do away with all this with the CBDCs, and this may be part of that breaking of that too. Is the vending machine that the CBDCs have to be, plugged into has to be built first also. And that may be what we're seeing here. And it doesn't look like it's a very functional vending machine.
Well, also remembering Cliff's data, he said that the new money system would fail. Was it 2 or 3 times? People reject it and all of that. So we're still in those kind of times, or facing those times.
And Reggie would step in.
That's right. And the government would come with hat in hand.
Blaze is, what would it be called? Like his angelic halo.
Yes. So I always think of him as like Archangel Michael.
You don't want to think of him like an Elohim. No.
Well, not an Elohim, but a big benevolent brother that's ready to kick everyone's ass if they don't behave themselves. Yes.
Sure.
That's how I think of him, but I'm a little biased.
Yeah. He's going to be the key, man.
I think so.
We don't need to get any deeper. Probably this is probably enough for people to chew on.
I'll share some of these other articles that you sent in the private chat in the description of this video. If you're watching this live, you might have to refresh, but it's great information.
Share the CoinDesk stuff relating to Mt. Gox. It's a separate conversation, really. And if this stuff really goes haywire next week, we'll have the Mt. Gox conversation and draw some.
Okay, well, I'll reserve that then for maybe next week we can do this again.
Maybe so.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate all of your thought that you've put into this, and I love your passion for sharing this with people and helping them kind of see what's coming down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I'm regaining the passion to share with people. I mean, after working so hard on tech that was in service of doing all of these things correct, you know, kind of like Reggie is. Again, less on the technology side, more on the regulatory language that attaches to the technology side. But, you know, I just got a little bit disheartened with a lot of this stuff. And I lost my passion for teaching this to people for a few years because I, you know, disheartened that nobody really saw the
use case, see the value in the use case versus
the use case of the tech itself, but the weakness of the system that they were in, that just the illusion of it, you know, that I couldn't break them of the illusion disheartened me. But now it's a different different world. So
I think
I'm regaining. Thanks for the impetus to come on and talk. In fact,
yeah, no, I love it. It's great. Well, you guys please go and follow Ben at
if you guys follow my YouTube channel or Rumble channel, it's Skullcap Savant, and it's mostly not financial stuff. You won't find financial stuff there for the most part. It's occult stuff, but
very interesting. I love it all.
It's all related, you know. It's all tied into the bigger scheme of our programmatic reality here. But
it's all very interesting. So I also put that link in the description so you guys can check that out and just have a little easier way to go right there and follow him. But he'll be back again here for us. So we'll see you next time, Ben. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
While nuclear weapons states can exert unlimited violence over even millions of individuals, strong cryptography means that a state, even by exercising unlimited violence, cannot violate the intent of individuals to keep secrets from them. Cryptography is the ultimate form of non-violent direct action.